título dessa palestra, a temática, será sobre integração da segurança cibernética ao sucesso operacional. O nosso palestrante, por mais de 15 anos, tem ajudado líderes de cibersegurança a desenvolver estratégias para identificar e mitigar riscos de cibersegurança, abrangendo uma ampla variedade de tecnologias de cibersegurança durante suas funções de liderança na Symantec, Forcepoint, Shape Security e F5 Networks. Hoje, ele é diretor de marketing da Nozomi Networks e concentra-se em ajudar organizações a defender melhor sua infraestrutura crítica. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Michael Plante.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Bom dia. Thank you for that introduction, Felix. I'm very happy to be back in Rio. It has been 25 years since my last trip to Rio, and many, many, many things have changed. It's a wonderful city. We all work in technology, and we are used to things changing very quickly. In fact, I would like to share today a perspective about OT, cybersecurity, and the changes we have seen in the past 10 years, and what we think is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years that will radically change the partnerships we use and leverage internally. A little bit about Nozomi. We have been in OT cybersecurity for 10 years. We started in 2013. Today, we defend about 12,000 facilities around the world. Every day, we monitor approximately 105 million OT and IoT devices and protect them from attacks. We are on 6 continents. We have many customers here in Brazil, for example. The only continent we do not have a customer is Antarctica. I want to get a customer in Antarctica so we can have all 7. If we go back to 10 years ago, when Nozomi was started, these are some of our leaders. So Moreno and Andrea founded the company. Oops. They founded it as a cybersecurity company, but do they look like cybersecurity professionals today? No. What's different? Shout out, what's different? What are they wearing? They're wearing helmets, hard hats. They're in industrial environments. 10 years ago, so a little bit, Moreno has a PhD, a doctorate in AI. Andrea has a PhD in OT cybersecurity. When they built Nozomi, when they started Nozomi, their mission was OT cybersecurity. But 10 years ago, if you tried to talk to the security team about OT cybersecurity, what would happen? I don't know what you're talking about. So we were actually selling cybersecurity to the OT buyer, to the plant manager, the factory manager. It was very much an asset discovery, asset visibility, value, and we sold it to the OT buyer. Now, our plan all along was OT cybersecurity, but to start, we had to talk to the OT buyer. It was a crazy, crazy market 10 years ago. We started with some customers in Europe. One of them was an electricity company, an energy company, and they needed help understanding the assets they had in their operations. We helped them find an entire facility, not an asset, a facility they thought they had decommissioned, but the facility was still online, still generating power, still part of their grid. That's 10 years ago. That is how problematic simple asset discovery was. So we've come a long way. What drives the progress of the past 10 years? We have seen 3 mega trends that drive the progress. We have seen cybersecurity events in OT. We will talk about a couple of those. We have seen changes in the regulatory environment. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we have seen evolution in the technology for OT and IoT security. If we talk about cyber incidents in OT, the first thing to understand is that many incidents that affect OT and IoT start as IT incidents, right? Colonial Pipeline, ransomware attack on IT. What happened? They had to close down OT because they could not tell if the ransomware had made it to operations. And so as a precaution, they shut down the pipeline. That Colonial Pipeline in the US serves about 20% of the US market, and it was closed for 8 days. That was a huge blow. It was in the winter. It was a huge blow to the US economy, and it was an incident in OT that started in IT. These are actual incidents that start in OT. We won't spend a ton of time going through them, but Conficker is a worm that has been around since 2008. And yet every year we still discover, we the industry, not necessarily we Nozomi. The industry discovers Conficker 300 to 400,000 times every year. And it's, what is that, 16 years old? Okay, this is what we call a known problem with a known impact. And this drove situations like Conficker, drove the need for vulnerability management for OT. It's different than IT, but we needed to have vulnerability management for OT. If you go around the horn, if you look at Black Energy, this was an attack on the Ukrainian power systems in 2015. This was an example of customers need continuously updated threat intelligence, because if you deployed a solution in 2014, it did not know about Black Energy because it was new. But if you had continuously updated threat intelligence for your OT, then you could detect Black Energy and stop it. You guys remember NotPetya? Right, this was an attack. This has been the single most destructive OT attack in history so far. Some estimates, it's caused $10 billion of operational damage. This is an example of where the way this works is it pretends to be malware, and it uses known exploits. And if you have continuous endpoint and OT asset monitoring, you can detect and prevent NotPetya. But it took down Maersk, the big shipping company. It was a very serious outbreak. And then finally, maybe one of the worst OT attacks in history, because of how sophisticated it was was InController. This was malware specifically designed to attack one brand of PLC in an OT environment. And the only way you could have detected InController is if you have behavioral analytics, AI, that is looking at not just the network traffic between PLCs and HMIs, but also what's inside the packets, a deep packet inspection. That device should not get that command. There's something wrong. And so deep understanding at the packet level and AI processing that data would have been the only way to discover and stop InController. So you can see the major advancements in OT cybersecurity have come from battling these attacks. So we talked about 3 vectors that are accelerating OT cybersecurity. Number 1 is more OT cyber incidents that are specifically aimed at OT. The second megatrend that we talk about, that we observe, is the regulatory environment. Whether it's ANEL here in Brazil or ONS, it's NCSC, which is a regulation in the UK, or NIS2 in the EU, or OTCC in Saudi Arabia. All around the world, there is more regulation that affects and drives OT cybersecurity. And then we have seen the OT cyber solutions are becoming more mature. And 3 specific areas, we're doing a better job as an industry collecting more data and understanding that data. So we have more types of sensors, right? We have network sensors, edge sensors, endpoint sensors, wireless sensors. That allows us to see more of your OT or IoT environment and to analyze it better. And it's not just network data, it's also what is being what commands, what issues, what errors are coming from each piece of industrial equipment. As a community, we're doing more robust analysis of that data. With new cloud solutions, we can take all of your OT data from anywhere in your company, even if you're a large global company, and bring it into one environment so that you can analyze it. You can see trends. You can see vulnerabilities. You can see attacks earlier. And with all of that data in all of your data in one place, we can run better artificial intelligence, better AI over the data to give you better, more complete insights. And then we have enrichment services that make sure your ability to detect assets is up to date. Your understanding of vulnerabilities is up to date. Your understanding of threats is up to date. All of that is now producing better and better OT cybersecurity outcomes, more comprehensive asset identification, better identification of vulnerabilities, and better ability to manage those vulnerabilities, better anomaly detection, better threat detection, overall, better outcomes, better lower risk, faster response times. That's what we've seen over the past 10 years. And Nozomi has been part of the community that drives that. In fact, this is maybe too hard to read. This is a architecture diagram of the Nozomi platform, where we have a comprehensive set of OT and IoT sensors. We have either an on-prem console to aggregate that data, or a cloud console, and then additional enhancements to keep your installation up to date, and AI to improve accuracy, and also to make your employees, your cyber employees, smarter and faster about OT. That portfolio was built over 10 years, and everywhere you see a date and an icon was an industry first. Nobody else in the world had ever done it before Nozomi. I would just point out two examples. Last year, we introduced the first endpoint security solution. It's both endpoint software and a sensor that was specifically designed for OT and IoT. And then this year, we announced the industry's first wireless OT sensor. This allows you to look at 6 different wireless networks, Wi-Fi, cellular, Bluetooth, Zigbee, LoRaWAN, etc., and understand what assets are on that network or using that network. The classic scenario is you have a factory and somebody pulls up in a van. They're not even inside your factory. They're not on your Ethernet network. They're just in the parking lot, but they're attacking your infrastructure wirelessly because there's a stunning amount of assets in the OT and IoT environment that are wireless. I know there are some technical people in the room. This slide is for you. Basically, this shows in a classic OT environment using the Purdue model on the left hand. This shows you where industrial control system security, stuff like Nozomi, where it would be deployed. We put network sensors in between level 1 and level 2. So on the network, right in front of the PLCs and DCSs. Then we have Guardians at level 3 and what we call level 3.5. These are additional network sensors. You can aggregate that traffic at the site level to something we call the central management console on-prem, or to Vantage, our cloud service. So this shows you how this would be deployed in a typical architecture. Nozomi also makes its platform available in a wide variety of form factors. You can get it as rack-mounted appliances. We offer it as in ruggedized formats. You can get it as a portable sensor. The U.S. Coast Guard, for example, uses a portable Nozomi sensor to audit maritime ports. We have a number of customers that do audits and troubleshooting using portable sensors. And it's 2024. You don't actually need to use the hardware. We also make it available as containers or as virtual appliances that you can deploy however you want. And then, of course, now we have a wireless sensor. Maybe you looked at all that platform and said, where's the firewall? Or where's secure remote access? Our strategy is to focus on the technologies that require unique OT and IoT expertise, and stuff that has already been solved, like firewalls, like secure remote access, where the IT cybersecurity team maybe wants one set of firewalls for the whole company, IT and the segment boundary for OT. We're fine with that. We have a strategy to build technology partnerships so that we can seamlessly integrate with your existing IT infrastructure. Whether it is SIM, SOAR, firewall, service management, secure remote access, whatever. We partner with a number. I could not fit all of the logos up here. For example, I saw that our friends Tenable have a booth. We have an integration with Tenable. We forgot to put it on the slide. The reason we take this approach is to help accelerate OT security deployments. It's our experience that many organizations around the world don't have any OT cybersecurity today, and we're trying to find ways to make deploying OT cybersecurity fast, easy, simple. Leverage what you've already invested in to make it go faster. In addition, Nozomi has the leading OT, IoT research lab that is understanding new vulnerabilities, new threats, and publishing research so that the whole market can consume and learn more about the OT environment. Interestingly enough, even though Nozomi is 10 years, not so old, we publish more vulnerability disclosures for OT than anybody else in the world. In terms of customer feedback, the customer feedback has been very strong. This is from Gartner. This is customer reviews of Nozomi. And we have the highest reviews of anybody in OT cybersecurity. And you can read some of the comments. Rich feature set you can't live without. Powerful, skilled team. We wanted the most advanced technology available, exceeded expectations. That's the feedback I'm most proud of because it means we helped people like you. When we talk to security teams, we talk about where is your business in terms of your progress in OT cybersecurity. This is a framework. It's difficult to see. There's a curve right here that goes like this. From just starting, less mature, up to most mature. And we use this as a tool to have conversations with customers. Where are you today? Where do you want to get to? So I'll give you an example of how this plays out. A prospect will call us and say, we're looking for asset discovery. Great. Everybody needs asset discovery. But if all you do is shop for this, it might not be what you need if you want to get here. So we have a conversation with customers around where do you want to get to? And then, yes, if this is what you need to procure today, fantastic. But don't forget intrusion detection. Don't forget attack surface management. Don't forget the end goal of risk management, governance, and compliance. Today's CISOs, when we talk to them, and I had a chance to meet with 3 of them this morning for breakfast, we hear some common challenges. I'm curious if these are challenges that you guys deal with. First is an overall challenge in terms of awareness and education. Raise your hands if your company or organization has struggled to find enough cybersecurity personnel? You guys all haven't? Oh, okay, there we go. It's a common challenge. How many of you, again, raise your hands, has your organization had to educate the board about OT cybersecurity? Right? It's very common. It's a challenge. And I hope you guys saw how many people were raising your hands. One of the things that's surprising to us is we encounter organizations that don't recognize that they actually have important OT or especially IoT infrastructure in their company. So even the cybersecurity team doesn't appreciate the attack surface they have in OT or IoT infrastructure that they don't recognize they have. Another question, and I have some friends here from Constellation. I'm not going to pick on them. Oh, there's one of them. Whether you're on the OT side or the security side, raise your hands if sometimes you feel maybe we're not aligned, that OT and cybersecurity are not on the same page. Does that happen? Okay. It happens in every business we've been involved in for 10 years, okay? Another challenge that CISOs talk to us about, where will the funding for OT come from? It's very common that the board or the CTO or the CIO will say, we need OT cybersecurity. Security team, go figure it out. And the security team is like, with what? You didn't give me a budget, you didn't give me personnel. So that is another challenge that we see lots of security teams grappling with. And then most recently, we have seen challenges with the maturity of the category. Example, in IT, if I want to have a conversation with my board of directors about how my company is doing for IT cybersecurity, there's many, many benchmarks. There's much data. I can easily compare. I work in paper and pulp. Here's the benchmark data for IT for paper and pulp. Board of directors, we're doing better, or we're doing worse, or we're doing about average, but we need to do better. So that data, that understanding of how the industry is doing for OT security, CISOs tell us they need that. They don't have that today. And I have heard this from CISOs on every continent. They are struggling because their company says, yeah, OT incidents don't happen. We've never had an OT attack. It's fine. It's okay. If we do it in 2 years, it'll be fine. We call that a pre-incident mindset. And what we want to partner with you as OT cyber professionals is how can we help you get your leadership, your board of directors, your CFO, into a post-incident mindset. We have a customer in the US in paper and pulp. When they had an incident, all of a sudden, the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO, had basically as much budget as they needed to go fix this problem. That is a post-incident mindset. After Colonial Pipeline happened several years ago, everybody in oil and gas was like, here's all the money you need because we don't want Colonial Pipeline to happen to us. How do we partner to help our organizational leaders make that transition without having to go through an incident? That's a big challenge we're seeing CISOs deal with. Together, I believe we can conquer all of these current issues. Let's take a peek at where we think things are headed that will specifically address the business units, maybe the friction between OT and IoT. Now, this is a vision. After today, I would love your feedback, your reaction to this. This is the first time we share this vision in public. That's how much we love class and our friends at TI Safe. When you deploy OT or IoT security, by definition, it collects a lot of data. We understand every asset. We understand everything that's being sent to that asset, everything that asset is sending out, everyone it talks to, and we understand what's inside the conversation, right? Deep packet inspection. This HMI told that PLC to do something. We have all of that information. That information is incredibly valuable, and there's so much of it. Our vision for the first 10 years was, how do we use that data for cybersecurity? If this device starts talking to this device, and it shouldn't, let's alert, because there's probably something not good going on. If this asset has a vulnerability, and we know that vulnerability is being exploited, let's alert so that you can do something about it. Maybe you can segment off access to that asset. But using all of that data for cybersecurity was just the beginning. We actually want to give your organizations the power to use all of that data in new, interesting ways. Remember, that data is basically the heartbeat of your revenue-producing business, right? It's literally every asset that is helping to contribute to your revenue, as well as to important health, safety, and environmental outcomes. It's not just about the data. Even for cybersecurity, the amount of data that we collect is too much for just human analysis. I mentioned that even 10 years ago, when we first shipped our first appliance, it had machine learning in the appliance just to process the data from one piece of one factory, because there's so much data. So when you think about how can we partner to transform your business, think about all of that operational data plus AI. Today, all of that operational data plus AI gives you cybersecurity outcomes, reduced risk, better visibility. But if we use that data in other places, what can all of that operational data plus AI, what can that do for us? Well, it's beyond cybersecurity. We believe that all of that data and that AI can actually be used for operational improvements. Just a couple of examples. You can leverage the data that we collect for cybersecurity to actually do process optimization. How often is this device talking to this device and this device isn't ready? Or this device has to wait because these other two devices aren't caught up, aren't staying as fast. That data exists today. The data in a Nozomi implementation, for example, can help you identify and eliminate process inefficiencies and tune processes to optimize operational results. In addition, you can use that same data to increase uptime and increase resilience. You can actually look at the data that's being collected for OT cybersecurity and understand this device is about to fail, or this device is at the end of its useful life, and take that information and plan your maintenance cycles. The conclusion is really you can use the same data and the same AI that we have deployed today for cybersecurity, for OT cybersecurity, to increase revenue. That's really what this is about. Yes, cybersecurity helps not have an outage. It helps protect safety, protect health, protect revenue. You can also use that data to grow revenue. And we believe that as we become better at explaining this to the OT teams, the operational leaders, maybe it's a CIO, maybe it's a CTO, maybe it's the plant manager. If we can help them understand this will help them do their business better, then maybe we will have less friction when we want to bring in OT cybersecurity. So I'm going to share just a couple of stories. This is very, very leading edge. Not many customers or companies are doing this today. So I don't want the impression to be you're behind if this is not happening for you yet. This is the future. And I'm going to share just two examples of what that looks like. There's a company that runs amusement parks. And I apologize, I don't know how to say amusement parks in Portuguese. Do you know? Parque de Park of Diversions. Okay, cool. They run a bunch of amusement parks, and they use Nozomi to defend the OT and IoT in those amusement parks, like the rides. The rides are just a bunch of controllers and automation equipment. They just put Nozomi in front of that equipment, and they have discovered that inside the OT security data is everything they need to do predictive maintenance. These are very popular amusement parks, and so having a ride, maybe a Ferris wheel or a roller coaster, go offline is very painful. They don't want to do that on a Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. They want to do it Saturday night at 2 a.m. The data that is in Nozomi allows them to do that. Again, originally purchased for cybersecurity, now being used for OT operational outcomes. In this company, the OT people and the OT security people are very good friends because the businesses, the objectives, the outcomes are aligned. Another example, this one's not live yet, but we're having discussions. It's a large mining company. We have a lot of customers in mining, including Vale here in Brazil. And in this specific example, they have realized that we know more about the equipment in their mines and the health of that equipment and the operations of that equipment than anything else in their business. And they're now looking at that data to understand, is this process optimized? This conveyor belt with this natural resources, gets to the end and nothing is there to catch the materials because the two systems aren't synchronized. Again, an example of OT cybersecurity driving OT operational outcomes. If you go back to that maturity curve, again, we believe the early stages are the same. Asset inventory, network segmentation, intrusion detection, attack surface management, risk management, cyber, but the final stage, the ultimate maturity, is everyone is aligned on maximizing revenue and safety because the same technology and the same data can be used for both. I had to use ChatGPT to make a picture of a OT leader and a CISO looking at the same dashboard to run their business. That's kind of meant to be a joke, but it's kind of what we believe will happen as an industry, mature. So what do we think this means for us in the room today? We believe that you guys are advanced because you recognize you have OT and IoT infrastructure. Otherwise, you would not be here. But when we talk to CISOs who don't yet know that, the first thing we say is, you probably have important OT or IoT infrastructure. Protecting that infrastructure is a cybersecurity mission today. 10 years ago, remember the hard hats, the helmets? It was not a cybersecurity mission. It was an OT mission. Today, it's a cybersecurity mission. Figure out where you're at on that maturity curve and where do you want to get to next. And let's have a discussion to see what best practices we can share with you to get there. Use a risk lens. I have a friend, she works in the pharmacy industry. They make drugs, life-saving drugs. They also make cosmetic equipment. When she's doing risk analysis, obviously she prioritizes the factories that make life-saving drugs over the factories that make cosmetics, right? Because the risk analysis is in the life-saving drugs. If you're using an OT or IoT cyber solution, understand what data is being collected and start the conversation with your most senior OT person, CIO, CTO, VP of manufacturing, whoever that is, to say, look, we have all of this data about your infrastructure. How can we leverage that data for the good of the business, not just cybersecurity? To wrap, I did want to share with you a couple of Brazilian case studies. We have a Brazilian customer in the cosmetics industry, and they use us for understanding their and defending their OT environment. And you can see when we interviewed them some of the key lessons they learned. Like many businesses, they started out with visibility. That was the first thing they needed. But where are they working towards? They always knew, even though they started with visibility, that their goal was compliance and risk management. Another Brazilian customer, they're in the power space. This slide is in Portuguese. I did not write it. I don't know what it says. My fault. But remember how I said regulatory environment is driving the adoption of OT cybersecurity? This is a classic example. The regulatory environment in Brazil is inspiring energy companies in Brazil to get their arms around cybersecurity. And then last slide, last comment. These are some other use cases that customers are working with us on here in Brazil. I have connectivity issues with my plants. How do I protect them when they aren't always connected, or network communication challenges? How do I think about unauthorized devices on my network, on my OT network? By the way, this is where wireless sensors come in particularly important, because wireless is one of the main ways attackers can get on your OT network. It's more difficult to get in through the Ethernet. How do I know which OT inventory I have and which OT inventory has reached end of life, obsolescence? So in conclusion, a couple of takeaways. Number one, we've come a long way in 10 years. We believe that today we can do a fantastic job together of defending OT and IoT infrastructure. We believe that the future is using that data to also increase revenue and improve business outcomes. And we are thrilled to be working with TI Safe and the rest of the community here in Brazil to help defend your critical infrastructure as well. Thank you.
William.